Someone genuinely cares about you, and for a moment, everything feels easy. They check in on you, make time for you, and start getting a little closer than you expected. But instead of feeling completely comfortable, you find yourself becoming more guarded than you expected. You become quieter, you pull back, or you suddenly start looking for a reason to create some distance. And the strange part is, they may not have done anything wrong. Perhaps somewhere along the way, relying on other people started to feel unpredictable. Maybe you learned that it was easier to handle things yourself than to depend on someone and wonder whether they would actually be there when you needed them. So taking care of everything yourself may have become more than just a strength. It may have become the way you learned to feel safe. You get used to solving your own problems, keeping your inner world private, and making sure you never need too much from anyone. Then someone comes along who genuinely wants to be there for you, and instead of simply accepting that care, part of you may start wondering what it will cost you later. You might tell yourself that you are just being careful, that you need space, or that something about the relationship does not feel quite right. And maybe those thoughts are valid sometimes, but sometimes the urge to leave has less to do with the person in front of you and more to do with how unfamiliar it feels to let someone get close enough to matter.
The closer someone gets to you, the less control you have over what happens next. You cannot fully predict how they will respond, what they will expect from you, or how deeply their presence could affect your life. And if you are used to handling everything on your own, that uncertainty can start to feel unsettling, even when the person has done nothing to deserve your distrust. You may find yourself calculating what they might want from you, whether you are getting too close, or what could happen if you eventually depend on them. Sometimes the possibility of being hurt is enough to make distance feel safer than closeness. So the same person who makes you feel cared for can also make you feel exposed. And when closeness starts feeling like you are giving someone the power to affect you, creating distance can feel like restoring a sense of control. That is why you may not run from people because you do not care about them. Sometimes you run because you care enough for their actions to actually matter.
Sometimes the first sign is not that you want to leave, it is that you suddenly start looking for reasons to. Someone can be kind to you, consistent with you, and genuinely interested in getting closer, and yet your attention starts moving toward the things you do not like about them. You notice how they handle disagreement, how quickly they expect a response, or one small habit that suddenly starts bothering you more than it normally would. At first, you tell yourself that you are simply being observant. Then that small flaw becomes the detail you keep returning to, even though there are plenty of things about the person that you genuinely appreciate. You begin wondering whether it says something important about their character, whether the relationship would eventually become difficult, or whether you should step back before you become too involved. And without realizing it, you may have found the reason you were looking for. The flaw gives your mind something concrete to point at, so you don't have to admit that the real discomfort came from how close the relationship was becoming. Because it's much easier to say, something about them bothers me, than to say, I'm starting to care about this person, and that makes me feel vulnerable. Think about the last time you suddenly became fixated on one small thing about someone you were getting close to. Was that flaw really the reason you wanted distance, or did it simply give you a reason to create it? Sometimes, the moment you find a reason to leave, you feel calmer simply because you know you have an exit. Sometimes, you do not find a reason to leave. You simply start becoming harder to reach. You were enjoying the connection, but then you notice that this person is becoming more invested in you, and the growing closeness starts making you more aware of what you could lose. You take longer to reply, you stop initiating conversations, or you become noticeably less expressive when they try to connect with you. Nothing dramatic has happened. They have not betrayed you, crossed a clear boundary, or suddenly become a different person. Yet you begin creating small gaps between you, almost as if you are quietly reducing the amount of access they have to you. You may even tell yourself that you are simply busy, that you need some time alone, or that you are trying not to become too dependent on anyone. But sometimes the distance is not really about needing space. It is about feeling more in control when the other person cannot reach as deeply into your life. Think about the last time someone started becoming important to you and you suddenly became less available. Were you genuinely losing interest, or did their growing closeness make you want to regain some distance? Because sometimes becoming cold is not a sign that you stopped caring. It can be the moment you started caring enough to feel the need to protect yourself. Sometimes you do not pull away quietly. Instead, you start pushing just a little to see what happens. You might cancel plans at the last minute, respond with less warmth than usual, or create small moments of friction that were not really necessary. Part of you tells yourself you are simply being honest, or that you are tired, or that they should understand if they really care. But somewhere underneath that, you may be watching closely to see whether they stay anyway. If they get frustrated and step back, some part of you feels almost relieved, as if you had proof that closeness was never safe to begin with. If they stay and keep showing up despite the distance you created, you may relax for a while, at least until the next moment when you need to check again. Either way, you are not just reacting to the relationship, you are quietly testing it. And the strange part is, you may not even notice you are doing it, because from the inside, it just feels like something you had to do in that moment. Think about the last time you created a little distance, not because you wanted them gone, but because part of you needed to know if they would fight to stay. If that sounds familiar, you already know how quietly it can happen without ever feeling like a test. Because sometimes you are not pushing people away to end things, you are pushing them away to see if they were ever really going to leave in the first place. Sometimes, instead of pulling away or testing someone, you find a different way to protect yourself. You start explaining your feelings instead of actually feeling them. Someone says something that genuinely hurts you, and instead of simply admitting that it stung, you immediately start breaking down why it happened, what it means, and whether your reaction is even reasonable. You quietly build a case in your head. You weigh their intentions, their tone, their past behavior, and whether you are perhaps overreacting. By the time you finish thinking it through, the moment has passed, and what you present to them is not the hurt itself, but a calm, well-reasoned explanation of it. It sounds mature, it even sounds emotionally intelligent, but somewhere in that process, the actual feeling got quietly filed away before anyone, including you, had the chance to sit with it. Because turning an emotion into an argument you can win feels safer than simply saying, "That hurt, and I don't fully know why." If you can explain something, you can control it. And if you can control it, you never have to feel as vulnerable as you would if you just said it plainly. Think about the last time something upset you, and instead of saying so, you built a case for why it made sense to feel that way. Did explaining it make the feeling smaller, or did it just give you somewhere safer to put it? Because sometimes the sharpest minds are not avoiding emotion by ignoring it. They are avoiding it by understanding it so well that they never actually have to feel it. There's a version of this that goes even further than pulling away or testing or explaining. Somewhere along the way, someone gets close enough that you can actually feel it, the kind of closeness where their absence would genuinely hurt. And instead of settling into that, something in you starts looking for the door. Maybe they say something that sounds a little too permanent, like they are imagining a future with you in it. Maybe they show you a level of care you did not ask for and were not fully ready to receive. Maybe nothing happens at all, and it is simply the depth of the connection itself that feels like too much. Whatever the trigger is, you don't wait to see how it plays out. You start distancing yourself, not slowly this time, but completely. You go quiet in ways they can feel. You start picturing all the reasons this was never going to last. You convince yourself you are simply moving on, and by the time they notice something has shifted, you are already halfway gone. Ask yourself honestly, did you walk away because you stopped caring, or because some part of you was certain they would eventually be the one to leave? Leaving first doesn't actually protect you from losing someone. It only changes who gets to decide when the losing happens. If you leave before they can, you never have to sit with the fear of being left. You never have to find out whether they would have stayed. You simply skip straight to the ending you were already expecting and call it your own decision instead of someone else's rejection. It feels like control. It feels like strength. But underneath it, it's often the same fear the whole time, just showing up in a more convincing shape. You are not choosing to be alone because you don't want people. You are choosing to be alone on your own terms, because it hurts less than being left on someone else's. So, what do you actually do with all of this? not the usual advice about being more open or trying harder to trust people. That kind of advice sounds nice, but it rarely changes anything because it skips the actual moment where the pattern happens. The first shift starts smaller than that. It starts with catching the moment itself right as it happens. The next time someone does something kind and you feel that familiar urge to pull back or go quiet, you do not have to act on it right away. You just notice it. For example, if a caring text makes you want to reply with something short and distant, you do not have to send that reply immediately. You give yourself 10 minutes first, and you simply sit with the urge without following it. Most of the time, the urge does not actually mean something is wrong. It just means someone got a little further into your life than you expected. The second shift is in how quickly you decide what a moment means. When someone offers you help or shows you care you did not ask for, your mind might automatically label it as pressure or an obligation or something you now owe them. Try catching that thought before you believe it. Instead of, "I don't need this," try something closer to, "They just care, and that's allowed to be true without it costing me anything." You're not forcing yourself to feel differently. You're just giving the moment a chance to mean something other than danger. The third shift is choosing to say something instead of quietly disappearing. When you feel overwhelmed and the old pattern would have you go cold or vanish for a few days, try saying it plainly instead. Something as simple as, "I'm having a lot going on right now, and I need a little space, but I'll check in tonight." It feels far more exposed than silence, but silence only protects you for a moment, while honesty is what actually gives someone a real chance to stay. None of these shifts make the discomfort disappear completely, but each one gives you a small window, a few extra seconds, between the urge to disappear and the choice to stay. And most of the time, that's exactly where the difference actually lives. Picture that same moment again. Someone genuinely cares about you. They check in on you, make time for you, and start getting a little closer than you expected. But this time, when that familiar urge rises, the one that wants to pull back or go quiet or start looking for a reason to leave, you notice it before it decides anything for you. You don't have to silence it completely. You just let it sit there for a moment without letting it drive. And instead of creating distance, you stay a little longer than you normally would. Nothing dramatic happens. No sudden breakthrough, no perfect ending. Just one small moment where you let someone stay a little closer than usual, and you don't run from it. Protecting yourself kept you safe once, but now it's just keeping you alone. Maybe you're smart enough to protect your mind, but even the smartest mind still deserves somewhere safe to rest.